Hello, I'm Jason Mink for the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics Network. I just happen to have a few minutes before shooting my next Having a Drink with Mink video, and I figured I'd take you on a guided tour of the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics studio. That's right, ordinarily I sit over in that corner, but there's at least 3 more corners that we could be examining. Take a look, see what goes on behind the scenes. Now, Larry, my cameraman, director, and jack of all trades, he's enjoying Thanksgiving with his family at the moment. So it's just you and me. I'm going to have to handle that camera myself. So, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a sip of this magic drink, and then I'm going to disappear. And when I reappear, I'll be behind the camera, and we can go from there. All right, here we go. I can feel it. I can feel it working. I'm disappearing.
I'm gonna steal me some old comics. And we begin our studio tour with the Wall of Horror. Now, the Wall of Horror is directly above my workstation. It's adorned by many of my favorite magazines from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Your creepies, your eeries, your famous monsters, as well as your vampirellas, some Marvel horror, and my own personal favorites, the eerie pubs. And then right there, dead in the center, we have the Sideshow Toys Universal Monster figures. I love these things. We have your Mole Man from the Mole People. We have the Metaluna Mutant from This Island Earth. Henry Hull as the Werewolf of London. The immortal Bela Lugosi as Dracula. The equally immortal Boris Karloff as the Mummy. Max Schreck as Count Orlok from Nosferatu. He's not technically one of these universal monsters, but he looks really good on the shelf. And then we have Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. And on our second shelf, we have the Creature of the Black Lagoon, resplendent in all his scaly glory. We have Lon Chaney Sr. as Eric, the Phantom of the Opera. Lon again as Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Boris Karloff and Elsa Lancaster as the Frankensteins. And wrapping things up, we have Claude Rains as the Invisible Man. Now, these Universal Monster figures were sculpted by Olaf V. Hartvigsen, and I can't say enough about them. The likenesses are simply extraordinary. They photograph almost as though you have the real actors before you. They're just sensational figures. I can't say enough about them. Next up, we're going to look at a little bit of Mego horror. It would appear Mego Dracula has revived Mego Frankenstein to inflict some terror on the Mego population. And what does Godzilla have? Well, he's got a copy of Jason Mink's The Cult. A novel of transformational horror, Jason Mink's The Cult has been described as William S. Burroughs' Naked Lunch meets H.P. Lovecraft. If you haven't read it yet, what are you waiting for, folks? Order your copy at the link below. In addition to old comic books, I love some old toys. Now, I don't have nearly as many as I used to. I used to have quite a collection, but I managed to keep around the ones that were important to me. Case in point, here's my Mego Spider-Man. This isn't my childhood Spider-Man. This was actually purchased for me on my 20th birthday by my grandmother. She thought it was kind of a goofy gift, but it meant a lot to me then, and it means a lot to me now. Next up, we have the Corgi Spider Copter. Now, this is a great little toy. I remember this one fondly because I was actually hit by a car on the way to get one. It was in 3rd grade. A friend of mine had brought one of these to school. I asked him where he got it. He told me it was at the local hardware store. So after school, I ran up the street. Ran across the street, actually, without looking, and got hit by a car. Guy just popped me a little bit. He was just going around the corner, bumped me, knocked me down. Once he made sure I was okay, he called me a dumbass and drove on. It was the 1970s, folks. That's just the way things were. Here we have a DC comic shelf featuring some Kenner Superpowers figures, some DC Direct figures, as well as a nifty little box that came from Loot Crate. This holds my Superman comics, displays them very nicely, really get a kick out of this. Here's the Captain Marvel Pepsi Moon Glass. These Pepsi Moon glasses were available as free premiums from fast food restaurants in the 1970s. They featured DC characters. If you grew up back then, I'm sure you were familiar with these glasses. Very cool and very collectible. On loan from the Dennis Miller collection, at least until he gets a little more wall space, we have this beautiful Iron Man poster featuring art by Ernie Colon. After 5 decades, it's safe to say that Star Trek has been a constant in my life. Ever since I was a little old guy, I've thrilled at the adventures of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and to have their plastic representations on set brings back some of that magic. The fact that these are the original Mego figures only enhances that magic, bringing a familiarity and resonance to the experience that's otherwise impossible to buy. Now we go behind the desk to see some of the artwork that my giant head normally obscures. Here's the cover to Stormwell #1, with art by Eric Luna Salazar. Next to that, we see a sketch of yours truly by Warren Muzak. Beside that, we have an original Black Fury by fellow old guy and partner in crime, Mike Jones. Beneath that is a beautiful marker study of Jonah Hex by group member Charles Butler. The PVC figures here have an interesting pedigree, as they hail not from our fair shores, but instead are from Spain, which may account for their slightly off-model representation. For a brief window, these were the only toys of Marvel and DC Comics characters available, plastic curiosities that would soon be forgotten by all but the most ardent of old guys. Here is the wall of old comics featured behind me in most videos. The wall is ever-changing, reflecting recent finds, old favorites, or gifts from a gracious public. I like to be able to see my books. It keeps me motivated and always on the path to discover more. Here is a collage I put together a few years back. Yes, all of those images are from old comics, but only books that were incomplete, damaged, or otherwise unreadable. I mean, I'm not some sort of heathen. That said, using actual old comic books and not just scans gives the work an intensity and gravity that it would otherwise lack. But your mileage may vary.
Oh, hi. You just caught me doing a little bit of reading in the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics archive. Why don't you come on inside? Well, there's not really much room in here. Why don't I get out of the way and then you can come inside?
Established in 2008, the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics archive is made up entirely of beta readers. These are comic books that are well loved, read but intact. I intend to continue to collect these beta readers and build a collection that can be passed on to the next generation who can enjoy comics for their narrative and entertainment value.
And so that concludes our Old Guys Who Like Old Comics studio tour. I talked to you a little bit more, but I gotta get back on the set. I'm Jason MINK for the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics Network. Thanks for watching. Surprise! I was in the closet the whole time.